religion has transformed itself now into what we call society. So sacrifice is endemic, it's everywhere. And the church is captured in that. And the gospel comes to reveal the futility of it, that the Father is not a God that needs sacrifice. The Father is not a God that needs blood. The Father is not a God that needs a substitute. The Father is not that kind of a God. The gods are those kinds of gods. All of our mythological gods are those kinds of gods. And Jesus is going, that's not my Father.
Babylonian Captivity of the Gospel, today on In the Shadow of the Cross. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of In the Shadow of the Cross. After a long pause, we're glad to be back with you. Our brother Jim has been having some pretty significant health issues, going through some stuff. And so if you all can remember him in your prayers. But Michael and I felt it's to press on. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Our heart is really with our missing brother here, though.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we've talked about, he's the founder of the feast, you know?
He is, man.
He's the guy who brought this whole thing together.
He's a Papa Durkin.
Exactly right. Yeah. So, Michael, you've moved since the last, where were you moved in the last podcast? I don't think
when we were last recording, which would have been in February, early February, in fact, mid-February. Yeah. I was still in Minneapolis and had no clue that within really in a 7-week time span, Cheryl would find us another place to live. We could sell our house in Minneapolis, move here, and we're loving it. We're out in the middle of nowhere.
Still in Minnesota.
Yeah, in central Minnesota on a dirt road, dude.
That's
with
nice.
A dirt driveway and a farmhouse that's from 1898. Man, it's old. It's been redone,
wow,
of course.
Nice.
But we had to put a lot of work into it when we moved in, and Cheryl's been real good with that. And then 2.5 acres, and so I just turned 69, and Cheryl bought me a chainsaw and a pole saw. So I've been out there. We got several hundred trees. It's that 2.5 acres is surrounded by trees, and those trees in the right places in the middle, and it's really quite beautiful, Loren.
I saw your pictures. I'm sure it doesn't do it justice, but in the pictures, it was beautiful.
It's sunrise, sunset. Sunrise is beautiful. Just it's lovely out here and peaceful. Just the birds and the wind most of the time. Yeah.
Perfect for all this insane amount of writing you've been doing.
It is perfect, actually.
Yeah,
it is quite perfect for that. And but I think also just being outdoors again a lot has invigorated me. You know? Because it's kind of, I get to have my little grandfather experiences here all the time,
Right.
So, and people, by that I mean my time with Tom Brown, grandfather, and the tradition. So,
right. Yeah. It's awesome. And I hear you on that, because I've started walking daily and just being out with the trees and looking at the animals. And it's amazing how good that is for your soul.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
And the birds.
Yes.
So.
My favorite's the cardinals.
Okay. So, Cheryl's too, funny enough.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead. You lead off.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while, but we thought it would be cool to pick up with the Babylonian Captivity of the Gospel. And Michael's one of the works that he has a chapter titled this. And when I was reading it, I was just going, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this everywhere. But I have to admit, Michael, I was, on one hand, I was excited because you're bringing to light something that is right there. But on the other hand, I was heartbroken because it's like, one, it's a captivity that Christians have fallen into, have been taken into. But the other thing is that this has been going on for centuries. This isn't like some modern new thing.
Millennia.
Yeah,
Millennia.
right. And so you're going, I was sitting there going, this is no small thing that, we've been up against.
There
So
is correct.
why don't you go ahead and lead off with what you mean by the Babylonian captivity of the gospel?
Sure. So it's kind of a play on Luther's 1520 essay, The Babylonian Captivity of the Church. And Luther, in that book in 1520, he releases 3 books in 1520. Remember, nails the theses on the church door, 1517, right? 1518, the great Heidelberg disputation, the theology of the cross stuff that's embedded there in paragraphs 19 to 21. And then in 1520, he writes a treatise against the Christian nobility, on the freedom of the Christian, and this Babylonian captivity of the church. And it's this essay where he traces the corruption of the church to the Middle Ages and the dominance of Rome in controlling the sacramental tradition. Okay. So, like almost everyone at that period of time who would have been only familiar with the church fathers through these compendia, just kind of a list of citations from the church fathers, not the actual like letters we read today. I want to read Ignatius of Antioch. I go pick up the Loeb Classical Library, bada boom, bada bing. They're just reading these shorter quotations and paragraphs. Well, Luther just has the early church, and then there's this period that we would call the Dark Ages. Basically 600 to 800, right? And some will take it further. Some will take it to the Renaissance in 1200, whatever. Point is, Luther's looking back and he sees it's this Rome coming to dominance in the late Middle Ages, right? Or the early Middle Ages and taking over everything. Okay. That's Luther and that's his issue at the time. And whether you read that way or not anymore is irrelevant. But what Luther was drawing on is more foundational. And that's the metaphor for the Jews. The Southern Jews, not the Northerners, the Southerners. When the Northerners were taken into captivity, remember when a conquering army comes in, they don't take the 95%. Those people are left there because they're just peasants, stone workers, carvers, whatever, farmers. No, they take away the elite, the Bill Gateses and the Elon Musks and the politicians. That's who gets taken away, the money.
Right, okay.
and the power. So you take them away. So that's who's taken away. Well, when that happens in the North eventually kind of recenters in Samaria. That's where the northern tribes recentered, was in Samaria. But the southern 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, they saw themselves, they were haughty. They had the temple, they had Mount Zion there.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right. And so the struggle of Judaism at that point is the struggle between North and South that never really heals.
Oh,
of course, we know in America, North and South doesn't ever really heal either.
Interesting. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
But Luther, I'm digressing. Luther is using this metaphor of captivity when the Jewish leadership is taken to Babylon. And the writer of one of the Psalms at that point says, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept. These are beautiful rivers, man. We're not talking trash dumps like the Thames used to be, or like some rivers
right.
are. We're talking beautiful rivers. And by the rivers they wept. They wept for what? They wept for what they had lost. What their fathers had lost. 70 years they were there. That's like 3 or 4 generations. It's a long time to be displaced.
Right.
They're in captivity. until some kind enough conquering prince, Cyrus the Persian, who beats the Babylonians up, gets to say, "Oh, you guys can go home now." You know,
Right.
and they do. And what's the first thing they do when they get back, Loren?
Build the temple.
Got to build a temple. Where's Ezra?
Right.
Where's Nehemiah? You know.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, the church, and I'm using that term very, very broadly and almost inclusively because I cannot think of a tradition. And there are four major traditions. You look at Christianity, you got your Orthodox, your Roman Catholics, your Protestants, and then your Anabaptists. Those are your four basic types, of which everything else comes out of, right?
Right. Okay.
There isn't one of these traditions as a whole that is not captive to the principle of religion. And the principle of religion, that religio, that which binds, is blood, is sacrifice. Christianity as a whole is sacrificial. What's most interesting about this is that the very same early church that's becoming more and more sacrificial is going to begin to elevate the two biggest non-sacrificial thinkers in the history of human thought, the Apostle Paul and the writer of the fourth gospel, John, the Gospel of John.
Right.
These two writers become really elevated at the very, very same time the church is slipping deeper and deeper into sacrifice. You know, and I don't mean just sacrifice on a theoretical intellectual level. When these bishops met in the third and fourth, fifth centuries, it's sad to say, but it often came to violence, fisticuffs. In some cases, some powerful bishops would have a little group of thugs with them.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, when Pope Damasus is elected, I don't know, in the 260s or 70s, I forget. He has 100 sailors that he's got brought along as thugs that beat the crap out of anybody that won't vote for him to be pope.
Really?
You know, this is
Wow.
how far. Then listen, this is a couple hundred years. Is this great big descent into this morass of corruption and violence? It doesn't take Constantine, which doesn't happen till what, 315, 25 of
Right.
what is Nicaea. So the the captivity of Christianity for me has been there from the beginning. In the
Can I
tradition,
pause you real quick?
yeah,
Can you expand on what you mean by sacrifice? Because I know for a
yes,
lot of people I know, they're thinking killing goats and sheep and bulls, and
right,
they're
right.
they're not thinking what you're talking about.
Okay. So, yes. So, sacrifices, the sacrifice of goats and sheep and cows and chickens, and they still do that down in certain islands in the Caribbean, which we won't mention because we don't want to be accused of anything. But they do that kind of thing, you know. And, okay, whatever. Um, Sacrifice is the principle by which the community solves its internal crises by randomly taking their aggression out on someone. This someone functions as the community's scapegoat. The community demonizes this person before they kill him. They cast their sins on this scapegoat. They say, "You're the cause of all of our problems." And this scapegoat then becomes a ritualized process in the history of the human being. Listen, we just, as a species, came out of cannibalism about 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
You had the Mayans and the Aztecs here, and those civilizations, and there are still cannibalistic tribes on certain islands. We know this. You don't
Right.
go. You do not want to go there.
Right. Yeah.
Right, right. Ooh, look, fat American. Oh
Long pig.
no. Yeah, right. So sacrifice is this principle by which communities are originated as communities, but they maintain themselves. And that's why communities constantly need to be against someone or some idea, whether that someone is dead or alive. So you have communities today in the church, I'm talking in the church, that hate John Calvin, right?
Right.
They hate Calvin. Okay, he's functioning as a scapegoat for them because in the vast majority of the cases, these people have never read Calvin.
That's very true.
You
Yes.
know, he just functions that way. He functions, and we all have scapegoats. You know, we have the family scapegoat, the one person in the family that if it weren't for them, we'd be a happy family. You know, so
Yeah.
this is recognized in psychology, social systems theories, and other disciplines. It's a reality of our life. The sacrificial principle. What used to be where we did this wonderful thing of slaughtering another human being, that's not in our collective Western, Eastern memory anymore.
Right.
It's not there. And it's been replaced now by social structures that function the same way, economies that do the exact same thing. Religion has transformed itself now into what we call society. So sacrifice is endemic, it's everywhere. And the church is captured in that. And the gospel comes to reveal the futility of it, that the Father is not a God that needs sacrifice. The Father is not a God that needs blood. The Father is not a God that needs a substitute. The Father is not that kind of a God. The gods are those kinds of gods. All of our mythological gods are those kinds of gods. And Jesus is going, that's not my Father.
So one of the things you talked about was how one of the tragedies that has happened is how the the gospel was the sacrifice was worked into the gospel, where
Mm-hmm.
Jesus came to reveal the Father has no part in it, and then now it's been twisted where Jesus is God's approval of sacrifice. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
expand
where the
that?
Father has the biggest part in it. Give me blood, satisfy
Right.
my justice, my wrath. Yeah, it's an amazing inversion. Um, so quickly, we've most of us have had to come into where we're at through what's called penal substitutionary atonement. Jesus takes our sin upon himself. The Father can't look at sin, hates sin, pours his wrath out on Jesus, and then we get a free pass if we believe that that's what God did. And so we believe because we don't want to go to hell. That's why it's
Right.
so hard for people to say, I don't believe in that anymore because they're giving up their free pass.
Right. Yeah.
Because they think God's still mad. They don't have a clue yet that the one that they're turning to, the one that they're in Hebrew shuving to, metanoiing to, is so beautiful and wonderful.
Yes.
So what we know today is this penal substitution theory stems from John Calvin. It's one of the reasons he's so vilified in the progressive Christian tradition. But Calvin was trained as a lawyer. One of the other interesting things is you go back to the late second, early third centuries to the Latin Tertullian, who's in Carthage, and Latin Roman thinker. And it's Tertullian who's trained as a lawyer, like Calvin, who begins to bring in Roman law into Christian discipleship. So we have contrition, confession, satisfaction. You have to have a contrite heart, it has to be honest. You have to confess, it has to be an honest confession, and then you can make satisfaction, right?
Yeah.
And that gets brought into it. It becomes very much a part of the whole Western tradition of confession. So if you grew up Roman Catholic, of course, you know your active contrition. Oh my God, I'm heartily sorry that I've offended thee, and I detest thy just punishments, and da 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 da. You know, confess to the priest. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and then you wait for the judgment. 10 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers.
Right. Yes.
And then you go kneel at the altar and you do them as quick as you can, and you get out because you've made your satisfaction. Okay,
Yeah. So it's interesting because you talked about how having that penal substitutionary gospel it's not just that it sits over here, okay, here's a bad theology or something like that, that it sits just all by itself. And, it's not just a thing of, well, we have a disagreement on a belief and we got to fix this. We're debating how many angels are on the head of a pin or something. It's
Yeah.
that you talk about how this causes certain mentalities to come into the dominant Christian thinking. And I want to highlight something that you brought out. I actually wrote it down in my notes here that I thought was so good. You said this, we're not saying that Christians are bad people, that it's not because people are bad people. It's just this wrong thinking has gotten infiltrated into the community. And so what things were released into the community by this belief in penal substitutionary atonement, or this mentality of God being sacrificial?
Well, one major thing that gets released is that God is to be feared. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I mean, God is all powerful, almighty, everything, and can squash you like an ant. And in our imaginations, like Jonathan Edwards, we imagine ourselves as little spiders being dangled over the fire.
Right.
You're gonna burn. This fear is huge. It's the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing to overcome, to help people overcome, to learn that there is no fear with the Father. There's nothing to fear with the Father. Because the Father is light, not darkness.
Yeah.
The Father is love, not wrath. And these are axiomatic for us. And helping people move from this sacrificial view where God is violent, God is to be feared, also is going to not just simply change our personal relationship with the deity, but it's going to change the way we behave. Because if our God is no longer violent, a God what's the ultimate violence that God would destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, flood the world, or that God would sanction the killing of babies and children, or that God would kill his own son? What kind of a sick God is this? And people are finally going, that's the problem with Christianity. It has a very unhealthy God. They're finally realizing that the God of Christianity is no different than a lot of the villains in Marvel comics.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's really important to point out, though, that you're not saying that just coming up with this, we want a softer God thing.
Oh God.
It's that you're pointing this to who Jesus revealed. Could you
God who
go
is
there?
grace, a God who is grace, forgiveness, and love is a hard God to accept, because it means that if I choose this in relation to me, I'm also choosing that in myself in relation to others. And people don't want to go there. They don't want to love their enemy. They don't want to bless those that persecute them. They want vengeance. They want to feel their schadenfreude. They want retribution, reparation, retaliation. Give me payback, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. That's what they want. Justice.
Yeah. Right.
We want it now, damn it.
You're right. It's
Make
funny.
sure you know that.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because my wife and I just watched this animated David movie. And
I've heard about this. So I'm curious.
And I knew going into it. I mean, I knew what I was getting into because it's David. I mean, so I didn't go in ignorant and wasn't surprised. But the thing that was like, you really see the sacrificial view of God on full display, because there's a scene, and it's not even a spoiler, where they sing this song early in the movie, this song Shalom, and it's all beautiful and peace be with you. Well, there's this scene where he's rescuing people from the Amalekites. Am I saying that right? Amalekites. Thank you. He's saving them from the Amalekites. And as his soldiers are chasing the Amalekites with their spears, the crowd that's being rescued is singing Shalom, peace be with us. And I burst out laughing because I'm going, well, I guess peace peace for the group, when their enemies are dead, but no peace between them and the Amalekites. No
That's
peace
right.
in the
That's
community.
right. That's right.
It's peace when those guys are dead.
That's not just a brilliant piece of irony. That's a little masterpiece there in the way scapegoating processes work to mythologize.
Exactly, because the Amalekites are subhuman.
Yeah,
They must go. And
yeah.
then we will have peace.
That's right.
Yes.
Get rid of the damned occupiers. Wait a minute. We're the occupiers.
Exactly. So that's why and having just read your book, I was going, this is exactly what Michael was talking about. But notice this is woven into it's supposedly aimed at children, a children Christian movie that is actually completely usurping the gospel, not supporting it.
Absolutely. It's if there's not a privileged position by which I'm claiming to stand outside of Christianity. I stand within Christianity.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming to stand on a mountain. I am claiming to stand in the deepest valley. I'm not claiming revelation in terms of glory. I'm claiming revelation in terms of a horrible death on a cross. That's the starting point. And it's very important to recognize when we say we preach Christ crucified, or each of the Gospels ends with the crucifixion narrative, the passion narrative. And if the Eucharist, do this in remembrance of me. I mean, the Christianity is cross-suffused. When we get that wrong, when we fail to recognize what's going on there, we're going to misrecognize everything else. It is only the cross that can become the corrective lenses by which we can see everything clearly. And so we need to slow down when we are reading these biblical texts. We need to go, wait a second. The pastor said this, or some commentator said that, or somebody in my particular tradition said this, and I've been buying all of this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to read different ways of reading these texts, because there are multiple ways out there of reading any given text. But there are only two categories into which they fall: the sacrificial and the non-sacrificial. So let me give you an example. Mark, Jesus cries from the cross, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you abandoned me? Wow. God abandoned Jesus is the proposition. Question: why did God abandon Jesus? Answer: God abandoned Jesus because he put our sins on Jesus, and God cannot look on sin. Further question: what happened? That was God being angry or pouring his wrath out on Jesus. And so, on and on.
Right.
And we create that out of this, my God, why have you abandoned me? Because we think that it's expressing a feeling of Jesus. We don't recognize, A, that it's a biblical quotation. B, you can't breathe on a cross. By naming the first line, he brings to mind the whole psalm, which is a psalm about being a scapegoat. Also does not call for vengeance, but it does say, vindicate me, O God. But Mark, interestingly enough, is going to give us a signal that everybody's going to misread that text when he says, and two of those standing there said, oh, look, he's calling Elijah.
Yeah.
See, in other words, Jesus is quoting Psalm 22. He's the victim of their violence. And they're going, oh, he wants violence, divine violence here. He's calling Elijah.
Right. So they're interpreting it through their own violent mindset.
Exactly. And so,
which is what we've been doing when we would read it.
The text is telling us, you will misread me. You will misread me sacrificially.
Yeah.
And then when we learn this, we go, oh, and it's a jolt. And we begin to look at other texts. 2 Corinthians 5:21. After the God was in Christ reconciling the world to God's self by not counting their sins against them. You get down to verse 21. The one who knew no sin was determined to be sin in order that we might be the righteousness of God in him. All your translations God made him sin. But the word God isn't there,
Right.
right? So I have a long study I've done. It's like 40 pages. It's linguistic. It's primarily linguistic and philological. And I show how this is an early saying from the early church, that it has an Aramaic underlying it, and that the Aramaic, which these Greek verbs translate, it's in common usage in the pseudepigrapha and the Qumran writings, and that God, there's not a singular subject, and the subject that's implied is usually the people or the crowd. And so
Yeah, okay.
it's the one who was determined to be sin. Well, who determined Jesus is a sinner?
We
Caiaphas, the
did.
Sanhedrin. We
Yeah.
did. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. The one who was determined to be sin by us. Now, what happens in the reversal? Is that a correct judgment or not? Was he sin?
No.
No. We become the righteousness of God in him. Are we righteous?
Not
No,
without him.
no.
No.
No, just no.
No,
In other
right.
words, we made a wrong judgment about Jesus. Therefore, God is going to make a wrong judgment. We are not righteous. You know that. I know that. We just said that. God knows that. And God's going to say, no, I'm going to be in right relationship with you. Now, that's an anti-sacrificial
Man.
reading.
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, you talked it earlier. You mentioned about God being far more beautiful than we realize. Man,
Yeah.
that hits it right there. I mean,
Yeah.
notice he plays our game, but he
Right.
plays it in a life-giving, beautiful way, not a
That's
"I'm
right.
gonna get you" vengeful way. It's,
That's
oh, so
right.
you're gonna say my son is sin. You're gonna make a wrong call about him. Well, I'm gonna make a wrong call about you for your benefit,
That's right. I'm going to forgive you. That's right. That's right.
right?
That's right.
So, you,
So, right.
wow.
So all these texts can be read non-sacrificially. It's not a problem. I've spent my whole life showing that, right?
Yeah.
Um, the question is not whether Christians are ever going to learn to read them non-sacrificially. They can. The real question is whether Christians are going to ever learn that it's in the non-sacrificial following of the non-sacrificial Jesus who imitated the non-sacrificial God. And that means my life changes, the interior of my life, my inner spirituality, my psychology, um, my relationships, the way I engage others. It all changes. It all becomes Jesus-like. It's what the Eastern people call deification, only for them it's just metaphysical. It has nothing to do with the ethical or the restoring of the relational image between
Right.
us.
Okay.
That we remember from the Genesis lectures, we are together the image of God. I don't have the image, you don't have the image. It's when the relationship is there, that's the image of God.
Right.
It's that
Okay.
relation, that right relationality is the image of God. So, yeah, I mean, the church is captive to a lot of false sacrificial lines of thinking. Gnosticism is sacrificial. The notion of the individual self is very sacrificial. And what the problem with the concept of the individual self, no man is an island, we're captain of our destiny and all this kind of thing,
Right.
um, is it's forced the human being into the place where they have to give meaning and significance to their own life.
Oh,
That's why
right.
that's why the mimetic competition is so fierce. I've got, this kind of a house. It's bigger than theirs. I've got this. All of that is this need to create meaning and significance. And when you become uber wealthy, you found museums where your name will last forever. The Guggenheim this,
Right.
the blah 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 that. And you build monuments to yourself. Washington Monument, Tower
Right.
of Babel, I mean,
Yeah.
um, we're not called to that kind of thinking. We're not called to be celebrity. Everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to be a celebrity. Man, that is not what following Jesus calls you to. Oh, you want to be an influencer? Well, you'll be the one hanging on the cross influencing nobody, Jack.
Right.
Because that's just the facts.
Yeah.
The call of Christ is the deepest downward call to the greatest humility, the greatest honesty, the greatest transparency, the greatest vulnerability that we can think or imagine. And it's painful. Vulnerability from the Latin vulnerare, the ability to be wounded. If you're vulnerable, it means you're able to take a punch. You know,
Yeah.
you're vulnerable. Yeah, I can take a punch. I can take a hit. I can take it. I don't have to
Right.
retaliate. It's vulnerable. So that's scary discipleship, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a whole reason why it's so much easier to just keep the individual Americanized Christian life where you go
Oh
to
yeah,
church on Sunday, spend your hour, go home, and because if
yeah.
you stay in relationship with people, we've talked about how the church really becomes your gym of learning,
Hmm.
where you learn, practice forgiveness and practice these things. And
Right.
if we keep distant from people, you're not going to get hurt. But I love how you took from the individual to that it's the thing. Paul always constantly emphasizes the community, that
Oh
it's like
yeah,
I'm not going to find my individual name for myself and being a big shot, because Paul even talks about the less seemly parts even being the more
yeah,
necessary
yeah,
parts,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
it was that was a really good point. The other thing that I wanted to hit on too, though, is you're talking about, as we're talking about the ways to read scripture and stuff. I wanted to bring up how I've been really Lily and I had this really deep conversation on this, and was sparked by what you wrote about Jesus being the interpretive center. And even though it's one of those things I knew, but it was the thing of like really grasping that he is the Lord of the Bible. The Bible is not the Lord of Jesus. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
correct. That's
And
correct.
can you expand on that?
Yes. So I would ask anybody that wants to learn about this to understand I have a fourfold Christological paradigm. And that paradigm takes reason, scripture, tradition, and experience, the classic Wesleyan categories, and translates them Christologically. So reason is the historical Jesus that we discover with our reason. And I put that in quotes because it's that Jesus is always changing, because of scholarship's always changing. The Jesus of the tradition, that's easy to understand. The Jesus of experience, that's easy to understand. And then the Jesus of the text, um, uh, is how does Mark understand Jesus, or the Markan community? How does Matthew, or Matthew's John, Paul? And they're writing from a perspective. And I want to get those perspectives. I use all of those together when I talk about a Jesus centered hermeneutic. I need what the church fathers have said. I need what the historical critics say. I need what the tradition says. And I need what's lived and learned in my own experience. Where there's a congruence, where I can say, oh, that's here, 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 and here, it's in all four places, that to me becomes then a witness and a testimony to the living Jesus. And I know I'm reading texts, I'm living it out in experience. I'm choosing to find it somewhere in the fathers of the church, everybody before me, and I'm digging into the early church writers and the way they think. So all of this takes place together, you know. Um, I think where it's really effective is where you know you might have 4 or 8 people, and you have 2 people do each one, and you come together and discuss, and you try to find that one thing that's common across all of them. So I'm always looking for these patterns. That's how I read the Bible.
Yeah, yeah. And then you hit on the Emmaus Road,
Hmm.
how Jesus interprets the scriptures.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I saw that as a past tense. Oh, Jesus was he's showing them the scriptures. But you brought something out, go ahead, that I thought was like, wow.
You go ahead. I'm not sure
Oh,
what that
I
wow
was
was.
I it was that when he says Jesus interprets the scripture, that wasn't just like this past time thing he did for them. It was also a statement to us that
About his
Jesus
activity in the church.
interprets the scripture.
Scriptures in us. That's right. That's exactly
Right.
right. That's exactly right.
And it's through that cruciform, death, burial,
That's right.
resurrection
That's
of
right.
Jesus is the lens by which we read the scripture, which is why I watched that David movie. Because people, well, David's in the Bible. God told him to, you guys are cutting things out of the Bible. No,
Yeah,
it's that I was looking at it through that interpretive lens that I
that's
see on the
correct.
cross, where Jesus loved his enemies and
Right,
forgave his enemies and
right,
brought his
right.
enemies to himself, and even when he said shalom, he didn't take up a sword. he,
That's right.
he meant truly peace with you.
That's right. That's right. I mean, wouldn't it have been nice if David walked out and said, Goliath, I want you to know that in the name of the God of Israel, we forgive you. We forgive you, Philistines. We just want to party, man.
Yeah, I thought about that too. And Lily even brought it up. So what if he came out and he did that and said, because one of the parts of the movie that was struck me as a kid, I never even noticed this, but he goes down to the stream, he's getting the stones, playing his happy music,
Five
and he's
stones.
happily putting the stones. I said to Lily, I go, you
Oh,
do realize he's going to use that to kill somebody?
yeah, yeah. You know, it's
La, la, la,
slingshot
la,
stones.
I've
This
got
is
to go kill. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, slingshot stones.
Exactly. And it's
You
like,
know,
as a little kid, I never saw it that way. It's no, he's going to kill who God wants him to kill. And
yeah,
so, but through the cross, it looks a whole lot different.
that's right. That's right. And that's why preaching Christ crucified. That's why from the Apostle Paul, we have the Johannine authors, very cruciform framework and substance. And I've shown that by John stuff. And my gosh, you can't begin anywhere else. If you begin anywhere else, you're going to end up somewhere other than the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's the problem of the Babylonian captivity of the church. Instead of allowing the gospel, which has the exact same form and structure as myth, to become the science of reading myths and showing their deception and showing their lies and showing the truth for what it is, the passion. And
Yeah.
the way that the endings of the story change between mythology and the gospel with resurrection and shalom, real shalom. My gosh, you begin to understand that without the gospel, we literally cannot see. We cannot see.
Right.
We
Right.
are truly, truly blind. We can have all the religion in the world. We can have all the theology in the world. I mean, we can be wonderful and brilliant that way, but that doesn't mean we see. And
Yeah.
that's hard for me to say as somebody that spent 50 years of their life studying.
Yeah.
What is it that allows me to see when I'm humble enough to say, Father, I don't understand you. I don't get you. You make no sense to me, but I trust that you love me. I'm just going to trust and I'm going to just trust. And
Yeah.
eventually that begins to work itself out in the way you think theologically, in the way you engage others. The gospel starts with trust and it continues with trust. That's why trust is one of the three great things that remains, along with love and hope.
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing like you, where I read the word faith as trust.
Yeah,
By
yeah,
trust, Abraham went to a land that it changes
right.
the way it
Oh yeah,
reads.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Because we're not making these intellectual operations like faith is an intellectual operation.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe that God exists. I believe in it. And like James says, yeah, even the demons believe. And they're nervous.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Uh,
man, time flew. Dang,
time did fly.
you got a class coming up, so I don't want to keep you
Yeah.
anymore. But we didn't even scratch the surface. So what's the name? That book hasn't been published yet. It's coming.
No, it's coming. It's called Dying God, Living Word.
Yes, and I
Uh,
highly recommend. In fact, when that one comes out, I actually plan to buy a bunch of copies, and I want to hand them out to a bunch of people I know. Not because it's like you need to read this, but because I know they would really enjoy it and get a lot from it. And because I'm just sitting there going, I've even gone back. I'm not even done. And I went back and reread some chapters because I'm just like, this is so good. And you put it in a very concise, easy to understand. It's not a heavy academic book. It's really an easy read. So
I yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
I kind of made the decision. I'm done writing for academics. Um, I made that decision a few years back. Um, They're going to write for themselves. They're going to sit and talk in their little circles, and that's great. They can have a great time. That's not a game I want to be involved in anymore. I want to talk to the people, you
Yeah,
know.
and I think that's so needed because this is as I was reading it, like I said, it was both joy and disturbing because for me, I was also going, man, this is so in line with everything, the wrong view, the twisted view, the Babylonian captivity is so in line with everything I grew up in and trained with, and it comes so natural to go with that flow of the violent, the violence and everything you really realize this is unearthing something that is so deeply entrenched in our culture. It's in the air we breathe all around us.
Yes,
And
yes.
and so that's why I think this is really a must read, and I'm glad it's getting out there because it's a narrow road, but I hope it will help a whole lot of people unwind and maybe breathe some life into a lot of corners of Christianity.
And come out of the spiritual and theological exile that they're in, and come back to the promised land where the rivers flow and the fruits are abundant. Yeah. Amen.
Exactly. To a beautiful father.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, bro. Well, this was
Well,
good, even though we were gymless. Do miss a brother,
yeah.
but this was good.
Awesome, awesome.
All right. Well, take care of all our listeners out there, and we'll talk to you next time.